Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's Talking Stick Show. So this week's special guest, we have Martina Grubmueller. Hello, Martina.
Hello. So excited to be here, Del. Thanks for inviting me.
And thank you for coming on. I've wanted to have you on for a while, and since listening to your material with Andrew and all those shows you did with Andrew, a lot of philosophy and a lot of understandings and healings and teachings for me listening to those. So it's an honor to have you on the show today.
Oh, fabulous. Yeah, I must say I have really enjoyed those shows with him as well, because it allowed me to go into that sort of spiritual philosophy a bit more, and also quench my quest for the mental aspect, for really understanding the whole soul journey and everything on that level.
Beautiful. So I'd like to hear about your journey and your story then, Martina. We'll start. What was life like for you growing up, coming into this stage and coming into this part where we are going into the, say, Great Awakening or the Golden Age, Silver Age, whatever you want to call it. It'd be nice to hear your story from the start, kind of what made you get into where you are today.
Okay. Well, I'm glad now, because I've gone through this exercise a little bit when I started writing my book that is now coming out. So I had to look into that a little bit, because I wanted it to be slightly personal, give my story as such. How did I get into it? I think the first half of my life has been an accelerated path of karmic resolution. I don't know if you find that, but do you find sometimes that you are living not just one life?
Yes.
Even in one day?
Yes.
All the stuff that happened to me, and obviously that I created, was really an accelerated way of just getting rid of all this karma, as much as possible, working that first part of personality integration.
Yes.
And then get myself ready, establish myself from a, survival perspective. I've done my work in the oil industry. I know how to make money and all that, and now I'm in a lovely position where I can actually play with the second part of my life that is completely on a different level. I don't look, just very briefly, I've grown up in Austria. I'm Austrian. And I left when I was 27. And it wasn't something that, I had to leave my country. It never really crossed my mind. It was just one of those things where an opportunity arose and I took it. And like everything in my life, which I have been experiencing and realizing, is I work backwards. Things happen to me. I manifest I create certain things, but I don't necessarily, what's the purpose, what's the value of it? And then I work backwards. So I've come into looking into those spiritual teaching at a very late age. My initial, quest was really to make money. I had to leave my parental home when I was 19. So it was one of those. I think I was planning to become an interior designer, which didn't work out. So I became an accountant instead, as you do. But that was very useful at the end of the day. And I had to learn how to survive best. And from that place, everything just started to happen. I've never been a spiritual person. I never looked at that. Even when I started working with people, I always looked very much into self-development. So I've always been into self-development. How can we, let go of our emotional, of our mental, and of our physical perspectives that were holding us back? And of course, just like everyone else, I grew up in an environment that was not very conducive to self-love or anything like that. So I had to really work it the hard way. We all know what that is like. Details are not even necessary on this one, because we're all in the same boat. And at the end of the day, everyone was doing the best they could. I think what really saved me was that I had as I said in the book, I had an interest in how people were interacting with each other. I was always interested in the interaction and why people would do certain things. And that allowed me to dissociate from my own misery that I was going through at the time. So what I did, I always got myself into that teacher role, dissociate. So why are the people doing what they're doing, and how can we change that? How can I make it easier for me to, you know, live through this and all of that? And that was a benefit, that was an advantage. And at some stage in my life, I realized it was also a disadvantage, because when you do that, when you dissociate all the time, what do? You hardly ever spend time in your body.
Yes, yes.
And that was a journey, in fact, over the last 10, 15 years now, to really learn what does it actually mean to be in your body, and what does it feel like, you know, and how can I teach it to other people? Because everything what I seem to be doing is I need to be teaching it on some level. So I have to learn it for myself. You know, I'm a bit of a magpie. I always say that. I just pick and choose whatever I find from all these different, you know, modalities and teachers, and then I make it my own, and I put it together. I alchemize it in a certain way that works for me. And one of the things that I always also had was I love choice. I love choice, and I didn't know it at the time, what choice actually meant. I mean, that's probably the first part of our journey through the three lower selves, as we say, the mental, the spiritual, and not spiritual, the mental, physical, and emotional part, the personality part, where we have to learn what does free will actually mean? What does choice actually mean? So I would say I loved having resources. I loved having tools. And even if it was just a question, you know, it's like, what can I do? How can I change this? What is the solution? So the one thing, despite whatever I've been through, and I don't take myself, you know, in a worse position than anyone else, because we've all been through that imprinting and that conditioning, more or less. There's
that funny meme, not meme or video I keep seeing of, like, you know, those people rolling down the hill, and just before you go into the awakening and learning who you are, you're just rolling continuously down this hill, hitting rocks, hitting stones. we've all been on that hill, and we all still do at times.
And you know, it's almost like it gets boring to keep talking about this the whole time. And yes, we've extracted the learnings from it. And now for me, this level in my exploration is really, so what have I learned, and how can I now apply that to create something different in this world? So this is definitely something what's going on for me now. Ask me a specific question, because there's so much I can say. Is that enough for my past?
Yes, that's beautifully put. And it is, from what you're saying then, because lately I've been doing a lot of like learning about soul shards and kind of potentials and different aspects of soul shards, creating different futures. And this is something I've been looking into a lot lately. And it's interesting, going back to your story, all of those potentials were, one potential could have led you in a different path. One potential could have led you in a different path. And for me, I'm trying to figure out what my true potentials is, and say, like, if I have a soul shard which is trying to get me off course or direct me in a negative way, understanding that aspect of that soul shard. And it's interesting you say that about the life force and being in the body, because I was on my taking my dog for a walk, and I thought that let's talk about life force today and how important it is to bring that life force in, and what is life force as well.
Absolutely. So maybe, you know, what we can do is I'd like to summarize the first part of my life in a few sentences, and that will also be sort of confirmed, or let's say discussed in the book. Everything that I have in this book of mine that's coming out is the journey from challenge to choice. And once we understand that journey, and yeah, so that once we understand that journey, and we've really walked that path, you know, of the The non-victim. What's the opposite of that? Is the one thing we can't do. We can't do victimhood.
Yes,
and it's the one thing I have never done in my life either. And of course, that's what I also teach. And that's why I call myself a facilitator. I'm an empowerment facilitator rather than a healer or this or that. Of course, we are all of that. But, you know, with all this identification falling apart at the moment, you know, we have I don't know, a vastly different expression of ourselves on a weekly basis, right? And we see it in our interests. We start one course and all of a sudden it's like, oh, that's done. I've done this. And then, of course, what do? We go into self-judgment. You know, I have got the determination. I haven't got all of that. And what I have found out is that when you understand the journey of free will and choice, judgment doesn't have a place in that. You just got to really start from a very early age onwards, trying to work with your intuition. And this is where the life force comes back in again. You know, it's like when you allow yourself to play with intuition and over time to start trusting that intuition, you actually start working in alignment with the life force that is basically just using you, the body, as a vehicle to come through you. And this is the one thing that is, for me, there's an advanced level of grounding now when I look at that, you know, because we always use our body and say, okay, ground the feet into the earth and all of that. Now, I've been looking at this. What if our body is the ultimate grounding tool? And yes, we're standing or sitting anyway. So is it really making so much of a difference if I'm barefoot on the grass or not? Or is it the next level of understanding that what we're really trying to do is bring life force through this body, bring our soul essence through this body. And also we don't want to keep it stuck in this body as such. We just need to really understand that remote connection, soul connection that is not on this plane anyway, you know, and that changes everything, because once we have an understanding of what grounding really means, then we can much more appreciate the fact that the soul essence would be by far too huge to bring through entirely. And then it's okay, well, if it's not completely coming through me, where is it? Where are those soul shards, parts, and avatars? Where are they stuck? Oh, in different dimensions. Oh, different timelines. Oh God, what is this? What's a dimension? Where do I have to go? I need a time machine. This opens up this can of worms, and then you start realizing, well, you don't need a time machine. You just really need a place where you just shut up for a moment, be silent, and start acknowledging that dimensions are nothing else than different levels of awareness.
Yes, and that's it, to be in the body, how important it is. You all have those moments where you are in the body and you have that full heart center connection. And the other day I had it and I was just smiling and I was fully in the body with that heart awareness just pulsating around me. And I felt so comfortable. Like there was just an expression of love. And I remember thinking at that moment in time, wow, I wish I fucking could feel like this all the time. But then I've got that journey to go back to that, say, doing exercise, doing grounding skills, because quite a lot of people who come to see me say they're grounded, but they're not. And they think they're doing grounded work, or they have, like you say, take the shoes off. But it's a bit more than that. There's a lot more mechanics, and it's simple, but it's hard in a way, isn't it, Martina?
So let me ask you a question. Can you be grounded when you're not in this blissful heart space that you are describing?
Yes. And for me, what I've done through the past years is 6 days a week I do exercise, physical activity, stretching, because I have to physically tell myself I need to be in the body. I need to ground myself, because this journey, it can be ungrounding, can't it, with high energy and when you're doing lots of high energy stuff. So yeah, for me, you can be still, you don't have, sometimes I'm out of the heart a lot of times, but I'm still always having that intention throughout the day to keep grounded and knowing my awareness, and even feeling myself, am I grounded at the moment? Am I overthinking? Because as soon as that overthinking comes in, I know I'm not in the body anymore. And so I'm always perceiving throughout the day, how am I? Do I need to do anything to get myself grounded? Because for me, being grounded has completely, I do get ungrounded at times, but I'm 80% more grounded than I used to be, say, 8 years ago, 9 years ago. I was always ungrounded. I was always overthinking. I was always, expecting and stuff like that, until I went through the teachings of Andrew and many different teachings of how to let go of expectation. And like you say, be that life force. And when you feel the life force, it's like it's not a drug, but it's like such a loving, natural, warm feeling. And it, for me, going back to that as much as I can is my mission, so to say, or where I want to anchor myself, a future of trying to understand how to bring more life force in with my work. Even when I'm doing drumming lately, I'm having that intention, or dancing, rattling. I'm trying to bring as much life force through my body to be grounded as possible, because like you say, Martina, that's a journey, isn't it? And the goal of this life is to bring the light within our body and ground it into the planet.
Yes, yes, and there's one element of this. Whatever we are forcing or overdoing is working against us at the same time. And this is what we've got to be really, really be mindful of, because, you know, energy is energy. And we can be, think of a monk now, a monk that is not sitting up in the Himalayas, but is sitting probably, I don't know, on Trafalgar Square, and is completely content and calm and just lets everything go through him. And there's no element of passion as such, or happiness or that, but there is this, just that level of content. There's this level of non-judgment. And I would like to call that embodied spirituality, that really that understanding that spirituality is really a joyful embodiment, where everything that we do we do it from a place of non-judgment. We do it from a place of non-expectation, as you say. We do it from a place of not being attached to the outcome and things like that. We do it from a place of choice, just because this is what we want to do. And that level of choice changes continuously as everything changes. And sometimes, you know, are you willing to say, fuck it, I'm not doing the grounding today. I'm doing something completely different. And that is part of that embodied spirituality as well.
Yes, you know? Beautifully put. And that's, I have my one day off a week where I completely switch off from all things spiritual at all. And for me, that gave me clarity, because say 8 years ago, I was obsessed with spirituality. I was doing fire ceremonies after fire ceremonies, hours and hours of fire ceremonies, till it got to the point where I fucking hated it. And I literally said to myself, I can't stand doing anymore. And I had to have a lot of healing. I had to go into myself a lot. And I had to figure out, right, I need to take time off from it. I need to have a day to fully let go of spirituality altogether and experience 3D, to give me that more inspiration of why I'm doing it. Because you can enjoy yourself by doing something 3-dimensional, or just having a chat with a friend, having a coffee or a cup of tea. And I lost those skills. And because I'd say my ego, or my spiritual ego, thought that it was just all love and light, and that I had to be just doing the work, talking about it, so on and so forth. So I myself, Martina, have had a long process of understanding that.
Yeah. And also that, you know, acknowledging the spirituality in your breath.
Yes.
Acknowledging the spirituality in doing the most mundane thing. You know, even like having this conversation with somebody who is not, you know, really inspiring you to some level, but you're just there and you're working on this expanded form of compassion.
Yes.
You know, so it's like moving away from empathy. We've obviously realized, you know, the empathetic entanglements that just keep us dragging into the old form of, you know, of martyr and of all of that. So with the new levels of sovereignty that we have worked for, that we have now started to appreciate, we can really work with that next level of compassion. and where you can really have a conversation that might not even interest you, but you are totally present with that person. And you're like,
Yes.
wow, I from a place of non-judgment, not having a point of view, it's like, wow, I didn't realize that people think that way. You know, that really interested place.
And that's it. That reminded me of my father, and what I learned from him. He never really talked and looked at you and actually listened to you. And I grew up with that and had to go, right, this is something in my field I need to be aware of. So I was noticing it throughout my years of, like you say, it's listening to someone with openness, without judgment. And that's one of the greatest things we can do, is be these tools of their light generation, or whatever you want to call it. But just simply listening to someone in a respectful way is one of the most advanced forms of spirituality for me, because I feel that all of this new age stuff and loads of different light workers do get lost sometimes in that, and they don't have time for the regular, say, their family members, which I went through a while ago. I'm really close to my family again, and I had to do a lot of work and healing. And I have so many people who come to see me who straight away it's mother and father problems, and they've completely disconnected from what the true reality is and what they have to learn. Like you say, going through the school of hard knocks, being in the body, listening and having those observing skills.
Basically what you're saying is they haven't learned anything. They've just changed the polarity into a different arena.
Yes, yes, exactly. Yes.
Still running the polarized thought processes, which means they have not integrated the personality to the extent that they can actually start merging it with their soul aspects.
Yes.
And this is really, you know, this is an ongoing process where we have to continuously go back to this personality, to the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual, and really look for the signs, you know, before we can even start thinking of doing the soul shard work, or the avatar
Yes.
emergence, as I would like to call it.
And a question I want to ask you, because I do feel this is very big for a lot of people still, is, so empathy. Would you want to go into a little bit about empathy? Because I know a lot of new listeners which haven't listened to your material before, or Andrews will be listening. So empathy, and let's go into a little bit about what that is and the mechanics of it, so to say.
Yeah, so empathy, you know, I think, what does Andrew call it? He calls it the lowest level of psychic capacity, or something like that.
Yes, yes.
The interesting thing is, from my experience, I've never considered myself empathetic. That would not have been the work that I used. I was more the martyr. I had more the martyr element, you know, because I was always ready to have a solution. And no matter what was presented to me, I was always looking for a solution. And that can be very annoying to people, trust me. People did not like that, you know, because they just want to wallow a little bit in there, sort of, you know, and that's just not something that I could do. So I was going straight into looking at what was going on in that person. And instead of, you know, picking it up and making it mine, because this is the problem with empathy, that is misunderstood as a psychic capacity. Just because you can perceive what somebody is feeling doesn't mean that you have to do anything with it.
Yes.
And the biggest problem I have seen, and that was the same with myself, people do not understand that they are not most, but many people have healer bodies. So the body itself reaches out and picks up whatever burden, whatever problems, emotional, mentally, spiritually, physically, people have, and takes it on. So it's a lack of understanding what sovereignty means. So sovereignty and empathy, you know, needs to be put in a package for people to look at. And then really realize is that you're not doing yourself a favor by picking up other people's issues. You're not helping them. All you do is you pick it up, they feel good for 5 minutes, they walk away, and then, you know, it all comes back to them. But you are actually hurting yourself by doing that, by doing it tacitly, consenting towards it, you know. And that's another expression where people people don't know that they're doing it. And
Yes, yes.
when I started looking at my physical issues that I've been carrying around for the first part of my life, you know, I was totally thrown that I had picked up other people's thoughts, feelings, perceptions, projections, and expectations. Now, this is very important to say as well. It's not just the pain that we're picking up from other people. It's the perception they have about
Yes.
the projections they have towards us or onto us, and the expectations. And this is where the childhood conditioning comes from, because, you know, we're picking up you know, other people's points of views and making it our own. And then it's almost like a lie. We're buying that lie that it is ours.
Yes. And there's the martyrship inside of us, which feels like we have to take on other people's stuff, and that's part of our role. And this again is the healers, and it's happened to me before, where you're taking on other people's stuff and you shouldn't be. And fair enough, when you're paid for that money and there's that exchange going on for that hour and a half, where you're perceiving you're working and doing kind of reading work, whatever you're doing. But for me, it was letting go of that side and martyr side to me, where I'm not put on this planet to heal everyone. I'm here to experience the 7 colors. I'm here to experience my time here and fill out my contracts, but not to get obsessed with out there. And I had to basically retrain myself when I went out into crowds. I used to go out into crowds on purpose, and I used to keep pushing myself to keep going out, until the point where I started getting comfortable with it. And it took a long time, because you'd have someone across there who was very haunted. And this has happened last week when I went out in York. There was a guy who had a demon inside of him just screaming onto, and we all have those things where you walk past them. And for me, before, I probably would have been too involved and it going in there, but I was completely within and just saw what it was and just continued on. So there's like all of those little aspects and martyrship sides, isn't there, coming up for us?
Well, and how much more healing have you actually achieved by not entangling with it? So
Yes.
by showing him, by being that sovereign energy that you truly are, you have created a space for that person and for the entity to actually start working on themselves, if they would so choose.
Yes.
And this is that big misinterpretation of what a healer actually is. You know, it's that it's got nothing to do with taking on other people's stuff. It's actually being the space and understanding that as a healer, that's why I don't necessarily like to call myself a healer, because I'm more a facilitator. Because when you call yourself a healer, people say, okay, heal me. No. All I'm doing is I am being the space. I'm being the energy, the life for you, that you can do it yourself.
Yes.
You know? And this is what is so important for people to realize. And this is where we go back to victimhood, you know.
So what would you have? So for people who are wanting to move, become a recovering empath and walk away from that, what would you personally recommend some processes for them to do to start bringing themselves into themselves again and finding sovereignty?
So I can tell you the tools. I used to be working with Access Consciousness tools for a couple of years, and they have the most amazing, very, very simple tools. And I used to give them out, and I still give them out, and I still use them myself at times. So the first question is, when you start entangling, you start feeling a bit awkward, or you start feeling that you need to help that person, you know, it's like, ask yourself the question, what is required here? Just what is required here? So come back into your body instead of going all over the place. Come back into your body and say, what is required right now? Is there something required of me? Just because I'm perceiving that person is in turmoil or in pain, do I need to do something here? Or do I just choose to be the space? And there's no, you know, I'm not a big fan of protection at a certain level of, you know, experience, because we're not going into, we don't want to go into separation. Oh my God, I have to stay away and I can't do it. No, because you got to appreciate. And this, you know, this comes with the, I call it the triple S, the self-mastery, sovereignty, and self-healing. When you become more grounded in your triple S, in the self-mastery and everything, then you don't even go there anymore. You don't even go there anymore. So, but as long as you're not there, it's really that. Is there something required right now? Just because you're perceiving it, do you need to do something with it? Yeah.
Yes.
And that's really the acknowledgement. That puts you back in your body right away. And think about it. If you're not in your body, who is in your body? Who gets into your body? So if you're fully grounded and established in your body, in full awareness of what is going on without a point of view, and this is another thing, work on your non-judgment. If you judge, you get automatically drawn into that person's problem, because you're making a judgment call that that person shouldn't be in pain. Now, who are you? Who do you think you are, right? You might be a healer, you might be a visionary, you might be empowerment. Who are you to say that that person is not supposed to have that experience that that soul should have? And also, you are completely disempowering that person for having made that choice, conscious or unconscious, to have that experience. And I think that puts us back. Because when somebody said to me, who the fuck do you think you are, taking this away from me or telling me what, you know, this and that. And I'm like, what? All I wanted to do was help. And
Yes.
you giving me this? And
Yes.
luckily, I've had people in my life who really pushed me away very, very badly in that way. And it took me a long time to figure out that people didn't want me to do what I was doing.
Yes, and that's it for me. That reminded me of the lesson I went through, and the coyote medicine, one of the biggest, say, animal totems for me working with throughout my life, was how to be that trickster, and learning that when you start playing with stuff like trying to help people overstep the line, going into their field, it's only going to bite you in the back, like the trickster is. And for me, going through that process, my mum, when my father passed away, there was a point where I was trying to overhelp my mum, and it got to the point where it completely backfired on me, and all the effort I put into trying to help her, but still pushing it a bit too much, I felt, because it was my mum and I had to go through that karma and stuff. And it all just comes back to you in karma, and it all just kind of gets dumped back to you. And that was when I initially thought, I actually had a reading with Andrew and my mum, one of the readings I had. And he said, this is what you're experiencing. You're here to experience this nasty negative stuff because you're an old soul, blah, blah, blah. But this is your stuff. This is your contract. And for us to respect that and not to be like, right, I want to change that in any way. And it's bit me on the ass loads. And I've had to learn the hard way, Martina.
No, I love that, because you just actually applied it to yourself, to your soul's journey. And at the same time, it is applied to the other person's soul journey, because it's a dishonoring of your own journey, of your own learning, and a dishonoring of the other person's karmic resolution journey.
Yes.
Absolutely, absolutely right. And I think that is, for anyone who is empathetic and wants to help and thinks that they are so compassionate, that's the best way of looking at it. Saying you're not helping that person, you're actually, in fact, disempowering the person, because you want to take away their pain. It becomes a completely different choice when you are when you are being asked the question for help. Be that now whatever kind of exchange with family members, the exchange is slightly different than with clients.
Yes.
Yeah. But of course, we've all learned the big lessons when you start, your business as a therapist, as a healer, whatever you want to call yourself. There has to be a certain exchange, be that now monetary, or they bring you apples or carrots or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah.
And a great question would be for protection. Then you talked a little bit about you don't really go heavy on the protection, but I'm completely the same. I feel when you start working on yourself and doing the trauma work and working on the darker parts of yourself, going through that state, you start increasing your own life force and own light. And for me, when you do that enough and start closing as many back doors as you possibly can do, it's harder for anything to steal your energy. And a lot of the spiritual community for me is a bit obsessed with protection, and they kind of, when they're going everywhere, they're just being themselves in protection. They're actually coming out of the body and they're not in the reality anymore, because they're just confused and thinking about, right, golden ball around me, blue ball around me, and you hear it all the time.
It's look, we've all done it in the beginning of the journey.
Yes.
It's a good start to become more aware. The best protection you can ever have is awareness.
Yes.
Full presence when you work with anyone, staying in the question, what is required right now, and being fully aware with that person. And another level of protection is you cannot judge. Judgment is key. Judgment is key to all of that. And judgment, non-judgment is key to all of that. And non-judgment is a result of the Triple S journey, the self-mastery, the sovereignty, and the healing journey that becomes so fortified within yourself, outside yourself, that you then start becoming that beacon of light you were saying, where life force just comes through you. Everything, this is a perfect exercise. You want to work with working on your empathic misunderstanding or something. As you start walking, everything is coming through you. Think of you walking, the path is coming through you. The trees are coming through you. The people are coming through you. Let everything, or in the car, yeah? It's like you're standing still, because at the end of the day, that's how it really is. You are that standing sine wave of existence, of experience. You've got the body. Everything is coming through you, right? And if you can do that without fear, then you know that you've come to a certain level of appreciation what in spiritual embodiment is actually all about.
Beautifully put. And that's going back to the peacekeeper and the peacemaker and all those aspects of going into that dharmic state of peace, where you can actually protect yourself from being a peaceful person and having that frequency of in that heart space and in that non-judgment space. All of those are just layers of protection. So you are not out there empathing, or you're not kind of biting at the sandwich, so to say.
Well, you know, I mean, this kind of work doesn't stop in the scene. You know, as we were talking about soul shards, parts, and avatars, you know, we are so hung up about this reality, all the shard, all the people, all the beings, you know, that are working against us, and all of that. You know, the avatar emergence is really something to look at in terms of how many shards, parts, and avatars, or I am versions of yourself that are part of your soul essence that are doing exactly the same. Because it's the same in the unseen. We have competitive shards that are working against us. We have, you know, wounded shards that are dragging us down. This is where, you know, housekeeping is something that we need to look at. We need to look at our own house. What's going on with our soul? How can we as the avatar, the one who calls the shots, the I am, that is here right now, breathing. And this is, I always say that because, you know, we do a lot of ancestry work, and lots of us get lost in the future, like, you know, I've been there, done that, all of it. And at the end of the day, none of that makes any sense if you're not appreciating the fact that what spiritual embodiment is, that you are the avatar here. You're the one breathing.
Yes.
You are the ancestor of the past and the future. Okay.
And remembering,
sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, again, remembering that red blood link that we all have, and we are the technology, we are the blood. And for me, that reminded, when you were saying that, of some of the psychic surgery work I've done of late on a friend, was basically going into the future and looking at shards and recalling those shards from all future versions to come back, and you have to cancel them. And for me, looking into my own soul shards and asking them to come back, and that's why soul shard recovery is so important for doing it to yourself, is recalling those shards which are out trying to trying to make, say, more karmic lifetime affairs or negative shit, recalling them and having to counsel them and being aware of yourself, being aware of those points which are blind. And I had the bat as one of my teachers in the last week, reminding me the blind side of myself. What am I not looking at? Always looking into myself, and what am I not really looking at? And yeah, that just reminded me of all those aspects of those shards. Say you've got a rebellion side to you, and you've got probably a shard out in the future trying to predict, like Andrew says, potentials in your crown chakra. There's all different types of potentials you could have. And it's about, like you say, finding you are the avatar. You are, all it is choice, and realizing that you are the self-illuminated master of the now. And it all comes down to that, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And then, you know, let's not forget one thing when we talk about shards, parts, and all of that. It's not a mystical, mysterious kind of thing. Yeah, it's just, it's really, what is it? It's the old wounding, the old conditioning. It's the old imprinting. These are energies that are stuck somewhere. So we call them soul shards because they are encapsulated and separated from us. You know, and that's how then, you know, they're stuck on a timeline. They're stuck in a different dimension. And again, that's not mysterious. That just means that, okay, whatever happened to you 20 years ago and you haven't really worked through it yet, that's that shard. And then, of course, we have shards. You know, I had a shard once. It was so funny. I was working with addiction because I used to have, let's say that, very addictive personality.
Hey, I did as well. I did as well.
Compulsive, right? The compulsiveness in us. And, you know, sometimes we say passion, but is it really, you know? But anyway, so there was this shard, this part, and I brought her up and she appeared to me as a lady, very ancient lady, and very, very hurt and wounded and all of that. And I had her stand in front of me, and I did my, you know, being an entity facilitator, I went the approach of, and you going to go now because I want you out of my system and you're not going to work with me. You're out of my hub of interconnectivity and la, la, la. And she said, nope, not going anywhere. And I said, okay, what's that supposed to mean? You know? And she needed exactly the opposite. All she needed was a hug.
Yes, yes.
And this is the thing where, you know, when speak to your shards, speak to those parts. Imagine, this is where imagination is becoming such an important part of this next level of our journey.
Yes.
Because we are on this edge of unknowingness. We're entering a new era that I call it naissance. It's not a renaissance. It's a naissance. It's a birth of something completely new. And there are no teachers out there that have really experienced that. So we have to really draw on every teacher out there and our inner knowingness and our imagination to bring that era forth, that new naissance. Yeah. So, and how do we do it? Well, yes, there are people in bodies we can talk to if we're lucky enough. We have our little tribe going and everything. And then we have the others where we're learning through, you know, polarization and the pair of opposites and contrast and all of that. And that can be fun too. And then, of course, we've got all these shards, I ams, you know, and everything. The hub of interconnectivity, that is the hub of our soul essence. Now, start talking to those guys. Imagine them, you know?
Yes.
And they will start talking to you. So what I do is I just line them up in the front if there's something. And this chick, she just needed a hug and she dissolved. She said, thank you very much. I wanted to be acknowledged for what I have done for you, all these lifetimes. As you say, most of us are old souls. We've done this so many millions of times.
Beautiful. And that reminded me of, I had a shard, which was from a night in a lifetime where I was basically a zealot and I gave my life away for a king and I got stabbed through the heart. And I remember this shard saying, I was quite pissed off in that he couldn't have a life for himself, and you had to go back and heal that and love it and bring it back, and instead of trying to push it away, and there was aspects of me I was always pushing away, but instead of pushing it away, I've figured out you have to bring it back into yourself. You have to remember it, you have to integrate it, and you have to give it that love. And it's as simple and as corny as love heals everything. And it always goes back down to those teachings, doesn't it? That one of the most powerful thing is in creation is love. And to it, and an aspect, it depends how everyone sees it. But for me personally, it's always going back to those teachings that love can heal anything.
Yeah, and you know, this is the next level of self-love. I mean, it's nice to have a bath and to work with your crystals and all of that, but that kind of work is part of your self-love. Yeah.
Yes.
And
yes.
I have a slightly more expanded consideration for love. For me, it's the fabric of existence. So we are having this conversation, we're having, you know, I don't know, my cup of tea, everything is, without love, we wouldn't have any of that. We wouldn't have
yes.
a breath. So and without taking it for granted, again, awareness, staying in the question when you work with those shards, what is required? Do you need a hug, or do I need to be a bit more stern with you? Right?
Yes.
We got to really be careful with this, you know, polarization, not going, oh, this is good and this is bad. No, we can't do that anymore. There is no such thing. We're no longer having to look at left side of the brain, right side of the brain. No, it's all coming together now. It's all starting to merge. We need to really play in this field of what is required. What am I perceiving? And then using your awareness. Your awareness is all you need. And what is awareness? Awareness is consciousness. And consciousness goes up and down, up and down. Then you'll have a day where you have a very limited level of awareness, and that's okay too.
Yes, and that's it, isn't it? It's okay. And I apologize. I've got the kids old light because I've got a new room to put my studio and family therapy room. So I've got a light which keeps going blue, red, green. So it's the old kids' light.
Nice. Cosmic.
I keep going blue and red from the light changing. But anyways, and that's it. It is. It's that beautifulness of, like you say, love. And for me, that orchestra, and I know you've talked about this before, like the orchestra of consciousness, and it's basically like trying to in tune, finding a life force again, and finding that flow of, say, the rhythm of the universe, the land, and everything on it, and how love has created all of this, and me, as in the prayer, me dreaming you dreaming me, and the earth dreaming all of us in this dream, and that is all just an expression of love. And all this creation, even though there is the shit what's gone down on the planet, which we're all being very aware of over the last God knows how many years, but coming back to it, and what will set us free is, again, like you say, going into that life force, going into authenticity, individuality, and expressing ourselves again. And from having, say, listening to you on shows, Martina, you've got a very interesting philosophy on life, and the layers and layers you go into, it's very inspiring to hear it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I've realized over the years, and more as I go on this journey, that, you know, I'm a very grounded person, even if I'm not grounded, because I seem to have this capacity of being connected and grounded at the same time. And I'm starting, as I said before, this is something I will start teaching as well, because I'm only starting to recognize it myself. You know, the next level of groundedness is, how can you be expanded, so expanded that you're connected to all your hub of interconnectivities, to the past, the present, and the future. Because let's face it, I mean, time bleeding is already starting. We need to really start appreciating that, you know, time is disappearing, and we're starting to perceive the past, the present, and the future at the same time. So our levels of awareness will have to go out the roof. Is this a word? Out the roof, does
yes,
say?
yes.
Yeah. You know, it's that, you know, and also the reference points are disappearing. The reference points that we used to have are no longer going to be so useful. So we'll have to find a different way of grounding ourselves into that complete presence, because
Yes.
everything is going to be present. And there's a, you know, and of course I'm a big fan of the celestial medium journey, which is part of the avatar emergence. And, you know, I was under the impression, until I was told otherwise, that I thought we're all in this together. We're all doing this at the same time, but we're not.
Gonna ascend at the same time. We're all gonna ascend.
And without going into separation in this, you know, that celestial medium journey, the next level of self-mastery, and that, you know, understanding of that we have capacities to go to different planets and different solar systems and galaxies and everything, that is just a choice, you know. But if you are choosing it, then the level of fortification for your spiritual embodiment has to be 100%, because otherwise you're putting yourself into situations where, you know, you're going to get knocked down, because, you know, we're thinking this reality is tough. It's a piece of cake, because we've done it so many times. Now, it's really now for us to understand what life force, as you call it, what does life force mean, and what do all these other realms really require for us in order to be able to materialize there, to dematerialize. And all of this we can still learn here on this planet now with the new planetary energies.
Yes, yes.
This is why it's so exciting.
And that's it. And having those experiences, and how important it is having experiences, even if it's saying taking your dog for a walk or going for a trip somewhere. Very important to make sure we have plenty of different experiences, because those experiences enrich us as a soul and actually grow us as a soul. And we all have those moments where we go out and we go somewhere, or we have a schedule, which is, say, we go on a pilgrimage or we go visit family, so on and so forth. It enriches us as a soul, and it's very important for people to start using their life force in a positive way and exploring it and actually doing something with it. And like you say at the start of the show, having fun, laughter, having joy, because again, that's one of the most important things, is remembering to have a smile on your face, remembering that this journey, it's fun, it's a laugh, and we meet some crazy people on the way and we do some crazy shit. That's just how it is. And sometimes I have to pinch myself and go, wow, like I'm here in this room, in the now, going through into this awakening. And this time we're going into, in this period, hasn't really happened like this before on a planet this way. And to be part of that, and I remember Andrew talking about the dates, but for me, I was getting a bit excited, but I had to come back to the present all the time and saying, you are doing this work now, and don't get lost in 2050, don't get lost in 2060 and all of those great times. Now is the time to do the work and then continue on with that inspiration of the future and the fifth world of peace.
Well, this is exactly that, because what you're doing now is you're planting the seeds. You're planting the seeds now. And,
yes.
You know, I've also had to learn that, because, you know, I get lost in the future as well. But once I started understanding that actually future me is in the future, that, you know, and I started talking to them and I realized that, what the hell are you doing? This is what I'm supposed to be doing, you know, not you right now. You are just, you know, which is me anyway in the future, but not now. And then this is the thing, but we are competing with ourselves in the different dimensional realms. And, yes. You know, and for people like you are very impatient, like, you know, I'm sure we all are those, or, you know, I am certainly.
I do it when looking at the government. I'm like, fuck's sake, wish it just happens now. Like, come on, these fuckers, what they're doing. Like, I kind of have to take a deep breath and let them go, forgive them and let them go and continue on.
and you know what, Del, a very good way of looking at that is what I started doing now is, you know, if you are inclined to look at galactic citizenship and you're interested in going off world and understanding the celestial medium journey and everything, then just think what kind of species we're going to encounter. Because there's absolutely no such thing as they are all so much smarter than we are, right? There is like a collaboration, a co-creation that we are starting to look at. And lots of them, you know, will be much worse than our government.
Yes.
So think about it, you know, if you're really thinking that you will be communicating and mediating between the worlds, because, you know, lots of our mediators here will be mediators between worlds. I certainly, this is what I'm looking at. That's what I've been doing in unawareness all my life, but I'm starting to recognize now, oh, okay, I understand that that's what I'm doing. So again, that leads us back to that paramount key of you cannot judge. Look at everyone as an alien, as a different species, and say, okay, how can I help you? Because we're supposedly, you know, the teachers going through, the students going through the School of Hard Knocks. So we will be the teachers to other galaxies, planets. So why don't we start here, right now?
Yes, yes.
Sometimes that means shut up and walk away.
There we go. and it is in that kind of perception and learning for me, like even towards celestial beings, and say in the past where I've done work and ceremonies where I've connected to a celestial being and what they have taught me from the stars and other dimensions, so to say, whatever you want to call it, is how much stuff we have, say, not wrong with us, but how much stuff we need to fix within the DNA, and being able to speak to, say, an extraterrestrial or a multidimensional, high dimensional being. You're basically, a lot of people aren't ready for that. And I found out, firstly, 7 years ago, I had a visitation from one of my ancestors, which basically appeared next to me eating soup, and I couldn't see anything but the ancestral spirit. And I could see everyone. I just said, there's a big being right next to me, white, had loads of different colors. I went and spoke to Andrew about it, and he said, you weren't ready for it. Said there was no way you're ready to have that sort of communication. And from the years and years of doing it, all of this inner work, patience, non-judgment, all of those different things have kind of snowballed into being able to work on a higher level like that, going back to, say, the basics really, and how I wasn't ready for it. And I still potentially, I'm not ready now, but I've had experiences and communications now where they've taught me, wow, I've got a lot of shit to learn before we do connect to those star brothers and sisters. to speak to them and the level and the heart connection they have, it made me understand of how much work we do have to do and to this self-ascension, so to say.
Absolutely, absolutely. We all have to. And, you know, for me, it's always, you know, because I'm also a bit pushy, you know, I'd like certain things to happen right now. And
yes.
Of course, if it doesn't, and it doesn't most of the times, very often, I just get myself back and say, okay, so what can I be and do right now that actually makes my life joyful? And I use joy in particular, because joy is such a beautiful energy. It includes the passion, it includes the contentness, includes that, again, not having to force anything, and just enjoy whatever is around you, and really find that magic. I think this is another thing, you know, apart from imagination, is imagination, magic, the magic. We need to bring the magic back out, you know.
Yes.
And really appreciate it in a very in a daily interaction.
Beautiful. And that's it, finding that magic and the fun, and just joyous of having a conversation like this, and enjoying it, enjoying around you. And like you say, those addictive personalities, which I've had in the past, where I always had to have things rushed, and I always tried to get things done fast. And I believe when I had that communication with the ancestor spirit, all I wanted was instant gratification and expectation, and all I wanted was just everything so quick. And I'm still got a lot of fucking work to do on myself. I still do loads of work, but I'm evolving in a way that I can actually start enjoying the present more, start unfolding in the present, and actually looking around me and having a smile. Like before, all those years back, I was always looking for something, but instead I wasn't looking. It was about me being, and like going back to the life force. How can I bring more life force within me to feel more grounded and enjoy this experience?
Well, since you've mentioning a life force again, you know, it's like also the realization that if we are wanting to prepare the grounds for other interdimensionals and extra dimensionals to join us here, or to be more aware that they are already here to a certain extent, you know, we just have to start creating that bubble around us, not from a protection perspective, but from a really, I'm creating the space, just like we talked about the space for healing as a healer. Create the space, create that sovereign space around and within you so that you can become that signature frequency that can attract those beings in a more conscious awareness level towards you.
Beautiful, beautiful. And so for your book coming out then, Martina, do you want to talk a little bit about that and what inspired you for that then?
Well, the book is basically, it's almost like something I had to do in order to, it's a summary, I don't know, yeah, summary of all the work that I've done until now. And that doesn't mean I'm going into every single modality. I've done so many modalities in my life, you know, I don't even list them or anything. And my website is no longer really reflecting who I am or anything. But that book is basically giving, it's almost a teaching manual, you know, for people to, with a little bit of who you know, who I am and what I've done. And it's going through, it's got 8 chapters and it covers, I would say, the personality, the 3 lower selves, and then gives a little bit of the next level of collaboration with interspecies and dream work. So if I look at it, the first is, I think, relationship and sexuality, that kind of thing. So a little bit about that. Then emotions. There will be, for every emotion, I've done so much work on emotional mastery with my clients and on myself. Throughout my life, there will be revocations, invocations for every single emotion in it that really gives you a summary of everything that can come up when it comes to blame, shame, and guilt. And then through the revocation, we are all familiar with revocations. You can actually use it. You can record it in your own voice. So it will be these revocations, invocations in the book will be just like any others. They have to be recorded. They have to be listened to. You can add to them. You can, you know, disregard what doesn't work for you. And that goes through all the different layers, you know. And then obviously dream time, there will be a little bit about the walk-in, the work that I've done with AB on that, with his permission. And what's the other thing? Grounding and mastery. And then a lot of reframing as well in the new light of what we know now. Because
Yes.
I'm a big fan of, because English is not my mother tongue. So I love using the energy of a word and then just reframing it and looking at it from an outside of the box perspective. Time, it's about time, the avatar emergence, leadership, all that kind of thing, to cover the personality side in particular.
Beautiful. And yeah, the sexual treatment, revocation, which I've given to many clients, and it's helped them severely go in some really the layers upon layers upon layers which they weren't aware of. They gave the power away. So much great feedback for those. They're incredible.
Fabulous.
And so I'd like to have you on again at some point, Martina, and I'd love to talk about walk-ins and many different modalities and experiences for you there. And it's an absolute honor to share this show, and I've had lots of fun, and it's great to meet you and finally connect to you.
Is it finished already? Jesus, I just got warmed up. What's going on? Okay, fantastic. No, thanks very much for having me. And I also just wanted to say, you know, we're talking about this joy. And when I look at the work that you do, I'm not entirely familiar exactly what you do, but when I look at your posts on Facebook and everything, you actually embody that joy. you know,
Yes.
and you also have that capacity of saying, look, I fucked up. Yeah. And hey, that's great. How can we do it better? How can we change
Yes.
it? And I think that is for me, authentic and true leadership. And I just thought I'll mention that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And that's it, is making people aware. A lot of people are going to spirituality and there's pedestals and there's hierarchy, and people label people and always think there's blame and shame on themselves for having a shadow. And for me, it was about encompassing all of it. And like my many sessions and speaking to Andrew, learning who the fuck I am and not being afraid and ashamed of anything I've done in the past. And just seeing all of that as a teacher, and every single part, like your story as well, listening to it, there's so much inspiration and teaching within the story, and everyone has the capacity to tell their own story in a way that can heal so many people. Even the nastiest of shit to the most positive of shit, it all has parts which people can relate to and go, hang on a minute, I can change my life. Say 10, 15 years ago, I had loads of shards which would take me on down the wrong paths. And I had to really go within and find those shards, heal those shards, and actually come, like you say, come back to the avatar and realize it's me. I'm making these choices in an awareness, my shadow or my everything which is going on in front of me, to step back and start using grounded skills, start all simple, loads of different things like that. So it's been a crazy journey, Martina, but from everything, I'm just so grateful to be here, and every single shit I've gone through, a mistake, positive, great, it's just shaped me to who I am today. And I'm not running away from who I am anymore. And before I did 12 years ago, I used to run away from myself. And I'm like, this is me. And even with what I do, if I do things wrong, I learn from them. And I feel with mistakes, if you're not learning from them, it's important to, when you make a mistake, learn from it, move on from it. But when you start doing mistakes and you don't take any responsibility for them, and like you say, the martyr side comes out, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And if we can do it, everyone can do it, right?
Yes, yes, yes. And yes, so how can people get a hold of you as well, Martina?
Well, I am on Facebook, I'm on Instagram. I've still got my website, so I do sessions, syncholistic.co.uk. If anyone wants to have a look at it. As I said, it's no longer really representing who I have become, but it's so difficult to define anything new at the moment. So it works for the contact, and yeah, that should do for now. Oh yes, and then we have our Earth Nouveau groups on a weekly basis. There's a Facebook group which is called Earth Nouveau, and you're more than welcome to join us. We are exploring consciousness on a weekly basis, and we have a real amazing hardcore group there, and we go into all of those different arenas and we play.
Outstanding. And I'd love to come on, and I'll pop the link as well below on the YouTube for the Facebook group and the YouTube group as well. Right. So good. Brilliant. And yeah, I'd love to have you on again at some point, and we'll go explore the walking and every other different things. So it's been really, really fun and great to meet you. And I'm sure I'll meet you face to face at some point as well.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks very much, Dale.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you for watching the Talking Stick Show. Have a great night, evening, morning, wherever you are. Aho.